Hello everyone, welcome back to Players of Games. I'm William Julian, and today I have with me Chris again.
Hello, I'm back.
And today we are going to be talking about Destiny. Now, I don't know a whole bunch about the game. Chris does, and he's basically going to be talking to me about what the game is and all that. Right, Chris?
Yep, I know you've got some questions because you've heard me and some other people talk about it, and you've heard people like Brandon complain about it.
Yeah, and I do have Destiny 2 installed, but that's mainly because it's free now. But
Did you
start.
do the Steam transfer?
The Steam transfer? I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, because since Bungie left Activision, it is no longer on Battle.net. It is on Steam now.
Huh. Okay.
Look into that.
Yeah. Alright, well, let's start out with this. Since I don't know a whole bunch about the game, what is Destiny?
So, at its base, it's first-person shooter, which they've now been able to kind of add in that it is a MMO-esque game where there's a lot of people, stuff to do, look for gear to up your stuff, and just have fun playing the game. But honestly, the whole first-person shooter aspect of it is where I feel is honestly what kind of drew me to it over a lot of other MMOs that I know people play, because it being a first-person shooter does require some modicum of playing the game skillfully. Whereas a lot of MMOs I know, the skill comes in, knowing your timing, knowing your cooldowns, this, that, it's more precise timing
Yeah, like
and
a lot
like
of games.
having the right numbers. It's more timing and numbers, whereas I enjoy, positioning, placement, knowing what I'm doing quickly, being able to, look at threats and determine what you should do based on your area. That's the base of what the game is.
Alright.
And then you got
Well,
a ton of stuff you can do in it. You got your PvP, you got your player versus environment or PvE.
right now, is this more of the first Destiny or Destiny 2?
I did play both. Like, they're each kind of have their own charm. Like, things in the first were a bit more methodical, in my opinion. Like, certain things went slower. Characters were not as quick. You didn't have as many, interesting movement options. Whereas in the second game, sort of the action of it has been ramped up, where what you can do and how you do things is definitely more revamped.
Yeah, you
But
see that in a lot of games nowadays.
yeah, they've made a lot of good additions. Like as like a base easy example, in the original you had a melee ability and you had a grenade that were your main two cooldowns besides like your super, but between them there wasn't much difference. Now each class in Destiny 2 was given what they call a class ability. Titans have a few different like barriers they can put up to either protect from damage or gain certain benefits. Warlocks can place a rift at their feet to either heal you or empower your weapons, and hunters have a dodge ability that can like buff their melee or reload their gun during it, while also, dodging attacks.
Now,
With Hunter, Warlock, Titan kind of being the like classes.
right. And were those classes in Destiny 1?
Yes.
Okay.
They've been in the game since the start.
I did think so because I remember when Destiny 2 was coming out, the announcement of that each class would have subclasses that they could go into.
Yeah, they've had those in the beginning. They were a little weirder. because basically in the first you had there's three main basically certain guns and then the subclasses themselves have different elements to them. You have your void, solar, and arc are what they're called. So electricity, fire, and light, and then purple magic energy is the easiest way to describe it without getting too technical for void.
Okay.
Kind of darker light type stuff. And at start of Destiny 1, each class only had 2 elements. I started as a warlock for, space wizard shenanigans. And at base in Destiny 1, they only had solar and void. And then in later things, they added in the arc subclass. But each one was different. I know Titan had, I think, void and arc, and Hunter had solar in.
Okay.
And that's the whole thing, is that you had those, and then you had a bunch of abilities on each one that you slowly unlocked with points, and then you had certain choices of them to try and, mix and match what abilities each class had. What they did in Destiny 2 is, you pick your element, and then at first there were 2, now there's 3 main things that each have different perks, and they're kind of like little trees that self-contain things. That using solar warlock as an example, there's one that kind of specializes in movement abilities and being in the air and things you can do with that while buffing your super ability, which was changed from Destiny 1 to Destiny 2. Initially, it was a thing that could buff your damage. Now you get a giant flaming sword that can shoot projectiles. But, you got it extends its duration when you get a kill with your super. The super things track enemies and explode. Your melee gains and explode, and then you got a thing that lets you quickly descend from midair. You got the other one, which specializes in being in the air. You got your melee buffs you. Killing things in the air recharges your abilities. You can do more stuff while in the air, and then you have a midair dodge. And then later, they added in essentially the healing class, which changes your super into basically a more powerful version of your rift that both heals and empowers you for longer. You gain the ability to turn your grenade into a healing thing for you or your ally. And then when you do stuff for you and your allies, you gain benefits. But these are each their own little self-contained tree that you can switch between when you want to kind of dictate how your character is going to play and what you can do with your abilities. So it's a little less mix and match of abilities and more of, pick a tree. Which, while it may look, and honestly, when thinking about it, kind of is less options for mixing and matching, it's a little better in that you get the complementary abilities just all in one self-contained thing that kind of keeps focus on, are you, playing things where you're solo? You might not want all the stuff that focuses on just super teammate stuff, or maybe that'll help you because being able to heal yourself in something you are having trouble with can be very helpful instead of having to wait for your health and shields to recover.
Right.
Or you're in a raid with 6 people and buffing everyone's damage and healing them is going to be super more effective than just activating the thing that lets you deal more damage for a bit. whereas the healing and that is a little bit less effective if you want to play Crucible, which is the PvP mode. Whereas the other thing, which lets you, have basically in PvP a one-hit kill per swing with your super, so long as you connect. That's more effective in a player versus player mode than a player versus environment mode.
Right.
Just kind of self-contains all their abilities, which is nice.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know you're big into strategies, big into combos. What really attracted you to the game?
So, initially, I just kind of saw some stuff on it, and I'm like, oh, let's see how it goes. We'll see. And I know... I think it was the first DLC was when I started playing the first one.
Okay.
Because at first, wasn't sure about it, had heard mixed things. Figure, well, okay, I'll try it. And I tried it, and just playing the game was fun. You get, like, a very floaty or glidey jump as a warlock. As hunters, you get like double, triple jumps, and titans have their own thing. But just the movement felt so interesting with that, as you're kind of jumping and gliding and turning and shooting and all this stuff around these arenas with enemies. And just it makes you feel, when you're playing the game and being able to do these things and just like jumping around, firing guns at people while they fire back, and then having to run and find cover, not just hit a button near a chest-high wall. All this stuff makes you feel amazing. And that's when I started deciding to look into the story. Because the thing with Destiny's story, which I think you were going to ask about, I know. In the first game, there was some. It wasn't as much as a lot of us liked, because a lot of it wasn't overtly told to you. What were you doing? Well, we're fighting against these enemies to defend the city we're a part of. There's all this backstory that a person hints at, and then it's just literally told, like, you must have a lot of questions, and you never really quite getting around to answering any of those. There's a famous line that got a lot of people kind of mad at something, where a character shows up and is like telling you about this big threat to the city, and they famously say the line, "I don't even have time to explain why I don't have time to explain." And it's just like, we've kind of just been going around fighting things for vaguely defined reasons because they're bad.
Classic good versus evil.
But then there's the thing, is, that is basically how things are being explained, is that, you got, these are threats we need to deal with quickly. And then you unlock, while playing and doing certain things, you unlocked what were called grimoire cards. Which, again, an issue I had with Destiny 1 that they have done very much better with in Destiny 2 was, originally, you'd unlock them and then you'd go on an outside account and it would let you read the things you unlocked, and they kind of talked about the lore of the game. You had, like, you unlock a thing that talks about this Crucible arena you fought at called Twilight Gap. It's like, well, what's Twilight Gap? And then you look and find out that, when you read this lore card, it talks about how Twilight Gap was this battlefield where the one enemy race group like tried to attack the last bastion of humanity and almost overran the Guardians, which is, you know, what you are. Your character is a Guardian, which means certain things, i.e. you have a tiny little robot friend called the Ghost that can resurrect you.
Doesn't mean that you're a short blue person with white hair?
I'm going to ignore you. Basically, you read this story about how a fire team or group of Guardians were at Twilight Gap and repelled this whole invasion there. Like, and later things have expanded upon it as to what actually happened. I don't know if it's a lore thing from Destiny 1. I know there is one in Destiny 2 that talks about it where, you know, the leader of the defenses was calling for a retreat. And the person at that part of the wall was just like, if we retreat, we're giving up. We can't retreat. So him and his people made a last stand. None of them, I don't think any of them super died there, if I remember correctly. Don't quote me on that, because I know the one is the guy who runs like the Crucible, the arena thing. He was one of the people who fought there. And, you know, it's a huge heroic moment, but it's not overly talked about except in these background lore things, because you're more focused on what you're doing, which is honestly quite a shame, because some of the lore, there's some very good YouTubers out there. The one I watch the most is called My Name is Bife. He has videos where he goes over these like lore cards and talks about the things with them. Like, he has a whole like hour-long video that kind of explains the backstory between a couple of characters. And a bit of how we got that backstory in Destiny 1 was through 2 guns you got. 2 exotic hand cannons called the Last Word and the Thorn. People who know the game are going to be like, oh yeah, those. Because it kind of talks about it a bit, where the whole thing is the people who wielded those 2 weapons most famously had kind of a interesting history, to say the least, which is a bit too much to get into here, because again, like I said, there's an hour plus long lore video that kind of goes into every single card that refers to the characters in that story. And there are things that thus you see because of that in the game. You know, you interact with the one who had the one gun, and you can get both guns through various things. That's again another improvement in Destiny 2 over Destiny 1, was both those weapons are the end of exotic quests. Exotics being basically, they're generally rarer than some of the other like rarities of items, but that gives them special perks. Like, the Last Word is basically the closest you will ever get in this game to space tech cowboy revolver.
Kind of the sort of thing Cade might use. Cade is that one robot guardian guy with the smart lens.
I'm sorry, I was surprised you knew Cade, and that makes me happy. It's because he's voiced by Nathan Fillion, isn't it?
No, I have played Destiny 2 a little bit. I originally played it when it was during the free weekend. Tried it out. It had cutscenes. One of the first ones being the one with
Cade.
The Cade and the 2 other chief guardians who were a Titan and a Warlock.
Yep, they were the as the organization is called, the Vanguard, and thus like they are the leaders of those portions of the Vanguard.
And the other reason I kind of know who he is when I was working at Best Buy, I saw a whole bunch about him. He had a Funko Pop figure. Of course, the DLC came out of him dying. I would hear things from my coworkers.
Yes, Forsaken.
But of course, and probably the main reason I paid attention to him was because when Destiny 2 was first coming out, there was that trailer where Cade was talking to those 3 people and talking about everything being gone. And
it just switches between Zavala giving an actual heroic, we're not going to let them do this to us speech, and Cade just like, they're taking our stuff, and I don't like when they take our stuff. If you don't fight them, I'll kill you myself.
Yeah, I like those kinds of characters.
You just have the like difference between, the guy giving the actual heroic rallying speech, than him bungling it horribly and then just saying, there's gonna be loot.
Well, Cade had his own kind of trailer, separate from the other guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one I saw
it's been a while.
The most. It talked about how online dating, gone. Fast food, gone. And the puppies. The poor puppies.
Oh, yeah, and
the one guy
person at the end of it.
doesn't Leroy Jenkins, yeah. So yeah, that's kind of where my knowledge of Cade came from.
Yeah, and he was in the first game, and honestly, it was playing the first game near launch was kind of disappointing when it came to it. Because here's this character voiced by Nathan Fillion, and he really didn't say that much. He didn't, he had bits and pieces of character, but he didn't do much. And then later expansions, I think it was Taken King was the name of the expansion, that he was kind of like your main quest giver for most of it. And it was great. He had some really good lines. And
then suddenly in Destiny 2, he's killed off.
Well, it was definitely poignant. Like, it kind of pulled the thing that needed to be pulled, because killing off one of the other 2 really wouldn't have had the same emotional impact.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I don't like it, because he was, even as a warlock, he was my favorite, because, again, he was just interesting.
Yeah.
But, yeah, you see the cutscene of what happened to him and how he dies, and it makes you want to get revenge for him. And that's kind of the point of that whole expansion, is you are going to get revenge. I know people who have played most of it, because in the original storyline of Destiny 1, your Guardian did have a voice. There were lines they said. Back when Peter Dinklage was the voice of the Ghost over Nolan North. I still remember those days. And I understand why they changed it and the issues that it had with it. I never wanted to give him that much flack for it. He was probably there recording a voice, and they told him that he was going to be voicing a robot. So he made his voice more robotic. And then people complained, why is it so emotionless? Because they probably wanted a robot.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of how it was going to happen.
Yeah.
Certain actors, that's the thing. They will take that direction to heart and try to give you the performance you are asking for. And unfortunately, they realize later that maybe that wasn't the performance they should have used for that character. I don't blame the actor.
Yeah. Sometimes it's all about that direction. And you just have to be a good enough actor to follow it.
Yeah. And especially this was a fairly early voice acting role for him. So it's not like he knows to be like, maybe this isn't going to work out the way you want it to. He's probably just like, okay. It's your game, but with stuff like that, when you played that first game and your character had a voice, it was a bit jarring when for how much of the next, how long, you never hear your character speak. In fact, in a mission in Destiny 2's main campaign, they make a joke about it.
Yeah, I kind of noticed because that the ghost talks for you all the time.
And there's a point where Cade is like trapped in a thing, and he's just like, say something, say anything. And it looks like your character's about to say something, and then your ghost is like, fine, I'll say something. And your character just looks a little put out, like, he was talking to me, ghost.
So the game is very...
And then since the first game, the first words we've heard our character say in Destiny 2 were them saying that, don't worry, Vanguard, who are trying to like avoid complications from having to run off and get revenge. I'll do it. Killing him he's mine. I'll kill him. And everyone just kind of looks at you shocked, like this is the first words we've heard them say in forever.
Now, of course you can pick your gender and all, so do they have multiple voice actors for that line?
Yes, there are 6 voice actors, because there are 2 genders for each of 3, for lack of a better term, races. You have humans, who are kind of generic. They're humans. What can I say?
Yeah.
You have the EXO. EXO is the pronunciation. Sorry. EXO, which are basically robot people.
Right.
And the Awoken, who, to make the trope reference for a friend of ours, they're space elves. They're not actually, that's not what they actually are. They're whole complicated lore reasons for why things, and insert that here for people who want that. We don't have long enough in this podcast to go over exactly what an Awoken is. But they look like humans. Their skin is different shades of blue, gray, purple, stuff like that.
Right.
And they kind of have a differing society.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the cliff notes is, they used to be human. Things happened during the war with the main kind of vague villainous force in Destiny, the Darkness.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So here's a question. Complicated
lore, blah, 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 you want a lore video for me at some point, put it in the comments.
So here's a question. It's probably going to be the last one we have. Why should other people play this game?
At this point, it's free. Why not try it out? And if you like it, you like it. It is time intensive. I kind of play it a decent bit, but I'm not, constantly grinding to be at the top of everything. But it has a very fun community and a lot of just fun stuff you can do. Try it out, even if it's just to, have played this game. So you can speak from a more enlightened standpoint about it. There's a lot of people I know who have a lot of valid concerns and complaints about different things that have happened with this game. We're all human. I will never argue that this game is perfect, yada, yada, yada. It has its flaws, it's had its stumbles, but the people making it especially now that they've split from a lot of the people who were kind of forcing them into more business-oriented than game-oriented decisions, which, is going to happen with certain companies. Like, you can tell there are people there who love what they're doing and are trying to make it a fun experience. And it's interesting to try out. Just something that, especially if you like playing just like kind of shooter-esque games with friends, there's a lot of stuff you can do here with friends, even more casually. There's like, the game has 6-person raids. I've done those about once. And it was with a bunch of random people who kind of carried me through it because I had no idea what I was doing.
Oh, that's basically how I would only play it with friends.
Like, especially now, given that, again, the most recent expansion is Shadowkeep, which I'm honestly still new to Destiny 2, because after playing how much of Destiny 1, Destiny 2's launch was really not well. And I really didn't do much with it, because I'm just like, well, Destiny 1 was fun, but the things I've been hearing don't really inspire confidence. I didn't get into Destiny 2 till Forsaken, which is like the 3rd expansion for Destiny 2.
Right.
I just kind of passed it by, and then things happened later. Changes came in. I bought the base game of Destiny 2 at Forsaken's launch for like $5. And then bought the Forsaken expansion for about the price of a regular game.
Yep.
And it came with all the other expansions up until that point. So I didn't have to buy each and every one of them individually. And soon after that was the announcement of their split from Activision. And I watched the stream where they kind of announced, what is the moving forward point of Destiny 2, especially. Because there's a lot of people who look at it and go, like, why couldn't you just continue Destiny 1? Well, the company they worked with as a publisher kind of wanted to split off to the sequel. Like, they probably would have had who knows how much more of Destiny 1. And so long as they can stick to their word, they're hoping to keep doing stuff with Destiny 2 for years before possibly thinking about making a 3rd game and starting at that point again. And they are making steps towards some of these ideas they've had and kind of wanted, this living, breathing world where things are going to change and evolve with you. And the base game is now free. You can purchase things kind of individually. So if you have heard good things about some stuff but don't like some others, you can kind of prioritize what you like over what you don't.
And off of that, we're actually going to wrap things up because we are out of time. So thank you all for joining us again for Players of Games, talking about Destiny. In the comments below, tell us what you think of the game if you played it. Tell us what your favorite class is, what you like to use as a weapon, or your strategy.
If you ever want to hear more about this kind of stuff, let us know.
Indeed.
Like, whatever audience we have at this point of this podcast, engage. Engagement is what helps us kind of direct what we're going to do with this.
Yes, please hit that subscribe button, hit the bell icon. That way we can continue to do this and improve and get better. Shout out to the voice I'm going to try to imitate of RTGame. Like, share, and subscribe. You watched him, right? I think so. Minecraft player? He started with TF2. RTGame's great. Go watch his stuff too. Shout out to him. We'll probably put a description or a link in the description so you can go find him. But also there, you ready to record
You ready to record a quick 5-minute bonus episode at the end of this?
Sure. In the description below, we'll have a link to our previous episode, and keep an eye out for next week's video. We will see you then.
Bye, guys.